Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism midweek show. I hope you and yours are well. Nice to have you back. We're in the general election, so we're trying to get in as many election shows to you as we can, as many candidates as we can. And unlike the people that talk about Scotland United, we are Scotland United on here, so we've got people from every party, independence party that is, on this show. And we've not just taken like ITV, who only take the Tory and Labour Party. We've got all the Scottish independence parties on here. And starting first with my first guest is a Scottish-American technologist and business owner. He's been active in Scottish independence movement since 2004 when he moved here from the United States, and he lives in the Western Highlands. Lucky man, a beautiful part of the world. And he's a co-founder and a technical architect of 38 Degrees, which is an influential online political platform. And I'm delighted to welcome Warren Puckett from the SNP party. Warren, welcome to Through a Scottish Prism.
Thank you, Roddy. I appreciate you having me. It's a great honor to be here.
No, it's good we like people from all parties on here, Warren. We look forward to chatting with you. And the second person I've got is from the ISP party, and that's John Hanna, who's standing in Bathgate in Lithgow. John's a business analyst who's worked in Scotland and across the UK and globally, analysing organised change in banking. Oh, a banker. What can I say?
Banking. I've moved out into insurance and pensions, Roddy. So,
that's better.
So I'm not that bad. But, I'm not actually a banker. I'm an analyst. But thanks for having me on. Cheers.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here, John, and it's nice to have someone from ISP on here. And from an old mucker of mine from the Alba party, which is let me give you a short bio before we bring in. He's a lifelong campaigner for independence. When you look at him, you would think that's only 12 years. He's still got that kiddie look about him. Still a young man, full of experience. So a founding member of Alba, yes, indeed. He's always been an independence. He's a biomedical engineer, and he works for a local company. And he's interested. His biggest things are disabled people and those with health challenges through innovative technology. And I'm delighted to have Josh Robertson on here from the Alba party. Josh, hello, my friend. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me, Roddy. It's great to be here and speak to other fellow people who are keen for independence as quickly as possible. And your show's been a big part of that, Roddy, so I'm delighted to be on. Oh,
that's very kind of you. And nice to see you. It's been too long. And last but not least, a recent person who's declared another Indy for Indy candidate for there in Edinburgh West is none other than a good old friend of this show as well, David Henry. David, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism.
I know, who would have thought this? I only decided to throw my hat in the ring on Friday night after checking if a certain well-known woman campaigner was going to stand, because I thought she was, and she informed me she wasn't and would be delighted if I stood. So I made the decision there and then. So who knows what's coming now?
I'm saying you've got more hearts than a Milner. They have. SSRG. No,
this is true. However, I don't know about everybody else. The rest of us here have got a party behind them. I'm obviously flying solo now, and as an independent in an area that I grew up in. So I went to school in Edinburgh West, both primary and secondary. So I know the area really well. It's currently held by a Liberal Democrat, which she doesn't have a very good reputation amongst many of the locals. And the SNP held it between 2015 and 2017, but I've never come close to taking it again. So, and Alba, by the way, are not standing in that area, so I'm not competing against Alba. So somebody locally, I only live over the border, literally on the very edge of the constituency. So those things basically made me decide that, okay, it's worth doing it. Let's get rid of a Liberal Democrat and get an independent supporting independent MP.
Yeah, quite right. As I said at the opening of the show, I've invited everyone from all the independence parties. Now, someone might say to me, you didn't have a green on. And as I said, yes, that's correct. I've only got people from independence parties on here. So let's clear that up before we get any further. If I may go to you, John, you're standing in Bathgate and Lithgow. Now, is this your first time running for Westminster? What could possibly have got you to do this?
So I've ran for councillor a couple of times, but yeah, I think for me, I'm an ex-SNP member and I joined ISP in 2020. I've been supporting them since, and I'm just, just really want Scotland to be independent. Simple as that. And some of us just have to take up the reins and try and do something about it. I think we're kind of stagnating a wee bit. So, as a member of ISP, I've always tried to stand whenever elections came up. Always tried to support the party and just tried to push myself forward. We're a small party. We've not been going for very long. We're building our support up, and I can only hope that increases during this election. It's one of the reasons for putting ourselves forward in this election as well, just to try and get some more exposure. Yeah. So,
what's your main theme going to be in this election, apart from independence? I know independence is the big one. I'll take that as a red.
That's a given, yeah.
Yeah.
So ISP, I mean, that was set up by Julie McAnally and Colette Walker, as you probably know. And their big focus was not only independence, but for women's rights as well. So that's a focus for us. I suppose nationally at a UK level, some of the issues around the cost of living crisis and things like that, privatisation of the NHS we're against as well. In the Scottish arena, I suppose, we can oppose the GRR as it stands at the moment, and we're not happy with the hate crime bill. Some of these things have been fed back to me as being some issues. And locally, we've been made to pay £50 a year to empty one of our brown bins, right, because of funding issues in West Lothian Council, and that's the bin for your garden waste. So I'm not sure anybody will actually pay that. I think they'll just stick all their waste, their garden waste, in their grey bin. But I think probably one of the biggest things, although our boundaries have changed, we don't have Grangemouth in Bathgate and Lithgow anymore. We used to be called in Lithgow and East Livingston, so we had Grangemouth as part of our constituency. That's went away to Eva Comrie. So she's now Alba and Grangemouth. But it's right next door, and Bowness is in our constituency. So you can stand and look at Bowness, looking north and just turn left, and Grangemouth is just right there. So that for us, there's I think 500 people possibly going to lose their jobs there. And there are people all over my constituency who work there. So that's a big issue, I think, that we need to address. I don't know how successful we'll be at trying to keep that place open, but we have to go and do something about that anyway. So that'll be a focus for us as well. Yeah. So
indeed, it is a national issue. It's not just a local issue.
It is a national issue, yeah. I mean, for us locally, I know people when we've had, I don't know, many moons ago when some factories have closed down here, people have went to work in Grangemouth. It's been their second job or their second career. So those people might lose their jobs soon, and we just need to support them, I think. Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks for that. So my grandchildren decided to come rushing in the room at that point here. I was trying to get. I was doing the shout out my mouth to my wife to come and grab them. That one, the BBC. Remember the guy in the way come running in. Not as bad as that, but not far off it.
They just want to get involved, Roddy.
I know. Josh, I know you've just finished a hard university course and everything, and you're just getting started out in your career. What possessed you to put your head in the block for this one?
I mean, obviously it's independence. I think that's the driver for everything like all of us are here for. But just in terms of locally, Rod, I mean, there's so much here similar to what John's talking about in terms of Grangemouth, and I think that's a national campaign. We've even I spoke to someone at a street stall on Saturday who actually worked at Grangemouth. So even kind of this far west and south from the refinery, there's jobs and secondary and tertiary jobs that are linked to. So that's a key point of our campaign. But you're mentioning the university course that I've just finished, and actually that combined with some of my family, young lads who have just finished school and are wanting to go into a job, into a trade. And the difficulty they have in finding young apprenticeships, Roddy, is just absolutely incredible. I mean, you either have to know somebody or know somebody who knows somebody to get into a decent trade in this area, and it's just not acceptable, and it's not good enough. And there's definitely something that can be done there quite easily in our community in terms of trying to improve local job prospects for our young people, and closing our only refinery capacity certainly isn't the way to do that. So that's one thing, and obviously, the energy crisis has hit Airdrie shots quite hard. The increase in people's mortgages, the increase in people's energy bills is just absolutely scandalous. Again, at the street stall on Saturday, I was speaking to a woman who tells me she doesn't even turn it on anymore. In a country that's this energy plenty, that just shouldn't be happening, Roddy. So a conjunction of issues of putting independence back onto the ballot paper, the young people out and about who are in the community who need some sort of hope, some sort of future that they can then provide for themselves and their families, and obviously to help those that are struggling in the middle of energy. Not to mention finally having a candidate who actually lives in the area. Roddy, the current MPs, doesn't live here, hasn't lived here, doesn't know the issues, doesn't know the towns. Airdrie Shots is, although it's quite a big constituency now after the rejig, it's not just Airdrie Shots. There's like different wee parts of it all across. You've got Plains, you've got Chapel Hall, you've got Caldercrooks, you've got up in Wishaw, we've got a wee part of that now as well. It's there's different wee communities, and if you don't understand those wee communities, you're not going to be able to help people in them. So I put my hat in the ring, Roddy, to help nationally, but also I think I can do a job locally, because I know about these things, and I know people who want to make a difference if they're just given that wee bit of support. They definitely can.
Yeah, I think it's great. You're all local men in your local constituency. I agree with you. Carpetbaggers should not be going into constituencies that they don't live in and they don't have a connection to. Absolutely agree with you. Warren, you and I can look at tonight and this whole election differently. We're outside observers, but we believe in independence. What do you see as the main focuses for the independence movement in this? And from an SNP perspective, please, by all means, do you see as the main driving forces in this election?
Well, I first of all, I really appreciate all three of you guys that are running and actually participating directly. I'm driven more by independence than any particular party, but SNP at the moment is the one I felt, and I guess I do feel here in terms of this particular election is the best chance we have of getting to the next step if you believe and take on board the statement from Humza Yousaf and repeated by John Swinney that if we get 29 or more MPs, in other words, a 50% or more majority, we will then begin negotiating separation. And presumably that would also mean that in the 2026 Scottish election, we would have a confirmatory referendum based on that election to make sure that we had, in fact, a majority that could confirm that we're going to leave. But I'm really just focused on the mechanism, and certainly all those issues and policies that you guys were discussing are of concern to me. And I'm similar to Roddy in the sense that I had a period of time of disenchantment with SNP where I joined Alba and then left Alba probably for the very same reason Roddy did. So I don't really care which horse we ride across the finish line. I just feel like we need a plan, and for the first time in a while, I feel like the SNP at least has stated that we have one. Other than the discussions around UDI and various other methods having failed to ask for and receive a Section 30. So literally purely driven by independence, not by party, but I'm in the SNP locally now and have been hanging up my Drew Hendry placards and various other things around now that we've been recently subdivided into two sort of different constituencies, with Drew taking over for Ian Blackford and Lucy Beattie just north of us taking the Ullapool area and that area. So like I said, guys, I certainly don't want to come across as someone who's discouraging what you're doing. I think it's brilliant. In fact, David, if you can beat the Lib Dems, you're actually doing us a service and general effort anyway. So I just want us to get independence. And here's the thing. I'm a little sort of motivated by fear at the moment, in the sense that I believe that if we lose our voice now, and it looks like we're set to lose 30 seats if you look at the polling, that we won't really have a voice after this. I think that if we go through a Tory light red Labour, however many years they manage to hold on before it shifts to the other side of the same coin, that we will lose progressively our ability as a devolved administration to do anything significant in terms of becoming independent, primarily because I feel that it's just we're something that the RUK can't afford to lose, financially speaking. We have so much on the table, and particularly our North Sea oil with respect to balance of payments in the international marketplace. What's left of the RUK would drop significantly in the league tables, as it were, if Scotland leaves. And I'm sure that they will do everything, legal or illegal, to keep us from doing so. And the media is no help, obviously.
No, it never has been, never will be. That's why people like us exist. David, I'm agree, but I'm not quite agree with Warren as such that I think it will be the end of the road if Labour get in. But it's looking at Labour. I'm assuming, going by the polls that we see, it's going to be Labour. I'm agree. Two things I think, my opinion, I'd like yours, is that when I read those of you, one of the things, I'm digressing, if you look at the pictures of the Labour people going around Scotland just now, they've got a lot of youngsters with them. Ones that have not been born, or at least not known what a Labour government's like. Now, I'm of the opinion of two things here that I think the benefit, if it is a bad result for the independence movement, is that one of those, the unionism, Labour unionism, might just remind people in Scotland how bad it can be. And it might also just be that wee kick in the bum that our SNP are needing to get back on focus and back onto message, which is independence, nothing less. That's my opinion. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I think, well, I'm focused obviously very much on Edinburgh West, which is a slightly different focus than Scotland as a whole. So while everybody knows how much I support Scottish independence, and of course I'm still a director of SSRG, the think tank, so we've done lots of thinking, lots of meetings, and come up with a few policies. One got adopted by Alba and ISP, in fact, the EFTA. I've been to EFTA House, so I don't take it lightly. But my focus is also slightly different, because not only do I see the damage that the unionist parties have inflicted in Scotland, but they've inflicted that on the whole of the UK. The UK is in a much worse position than it was 10 years ago when we had a referendum. I don't think anyone would have believed that we'd all be paying through the nose for our energy bills. So I've already written and published it today, give it a bit of thought. If I get elected on the 4th and by the 5th, within 7 days, I've said I'm going to put a private member's bill down to limit price rises on energy and to get Ofgem to start focusing on what it was originally meant to do, protect consumers from unfair pricing. But people need to know that that policy was not a Tory policy. That was the Labour Party. The Labour Party in 2000 came along, took what had been Thatcher's privatised energy companies, which, by the way, despite what we think about the Tories, at least they saw the danger of private energy, so they limited the price rises to, I think it was a maximum of 3% above inflation once every 3 years. Oh my God, we'd be celebrating if last year we'd only had a bill rise of 3%. I know that mine went up 108% because I got the calculator out and worked it out. That is what the Labour Party did. They took away those price limits so companies could raise their prices as often as they wanted and to whatever level they wanted. And the whole country's paying for it. So not only did I hear Joss talk about someone come to a street stall saying they never put the heating on, I know neighbours that did exactly that. In fact, I knew that they were struggling with their electricity bill. So for Christmas, I bought them a gas heater with a big canister that goes with it, so they could turn a gas fire on instead of switching electricity on. The whole country's going through this. Now, Edinburgh West is quite a well-off area in some of the areas, hence why they vote Lib Dem a lot. It's from Cramond to Clermiston, Corstorphine, all the way out to South Queensferry. Well, Cramond is quite well off. Yeah, but there are other areas that are not well off. So my focus is very much on how could I immediately make an impact. I still think Scotland will be better off when it's independent, but I have one big worry about, especially the SNP's claims that they want to deliver independence. Because at the moment, their plan is they want to rejoin the EU. Well, I know as a director of SSRG, that's not possible if you're not going to have control of your own currency. So it's just, they're just offering a slogan. There's no meaning behind it. They can't join the EU without control over your own currency because you need to be able to control your economy. So they're not being honest with people. The first stage is you're going to have a central bank, then you're going to have to launch your own currency. And then at some point further down the road, you're going to have a referendum and ask the people if this is what they want. At the moment, they say, oh, we're just going to ask the UK government for another Section 30. The answer to that will be no. Labour Party are not going to do it. They've made it quite clear you're not going to get a Section 30. So then you're stuck in another, 10 years of the same cycle? So I'm looking at this slightly differently. So not only have I got my first bill ready, private members bill, I will be expecting the Labour Party MPs to support that private members bill. After all, their constituents will save money just as much as mine. I'd also want the Alba MPs, I'm fairly certain with the people that are standing and people that I already know, that they would be supportive of such a move. I would expect the SNP MPs to support it as well. The issue here is, would the Labour Party do it? After all, we're trying to undo the damage that they caused. They created the problem that we're all living with. And of course, as you know, Roddy, I ran a pub up until 2020 for a couple of years. I got out just as the pandemic lockdown got in. Pubs in general and restaurants use quite large amounts of electricity and gas, especially if you're cooking anything and for heating and your lights are on all day. That's why we're losing them. They're closing. They're going bust. So this isn't just about some people can't pay their electricity. This is shutting down jobs across our constituencies, and we have to deal with it. And while I'm more than happy to support independence and talk about how we're going to get it, there's a job to be done between now and delivering that. And we can make a difference immediately. And that's what my focus is. I think you're right. The young Labour supporters don't know what damage the Labour Party did. But let's just remind them of 3 things they managed to achieve the last time they were in office. They took us into an illegal war in Iraq, where hundreds of thousands of people died. They bailed out the bankers, but didn't actually support the public. And so the bankers got it. They're now claiming to lift bankers' bonuses. Well, I've never met a poor banker, so I don't think they need a bigger bonus. But there's an awful lot of people that can't pay their electricity bills. So they don't understand, the young generation don't understand. They think the Labour Party supports socialism and the workers' rights. No, they don't. They've been busy for the last year sucking up to the City of London, looking for support from big business. And they've already come up with some policies which have absolutely nothing to do with socialism or helping the average person in the street. So that's our target. Our target must be, and I think this goes back to independence. People are only going to support independence that haven't thought about it up until now if they can see that they're going to be better off. I would say to them now, if they're thinking about this, do you feel better off at the moment being in the union? Do you think Brexit's made you better off? Do you think the Labour Party's policies so far look like they're going to make you better off? Because according to Labour, they're going to keep the pricing and they're going to keep the budget the same as the Tories. So in other words, for the next 5 years, nothing is going to change. And then on top of that, I think something none of us have talked about is the issue in Gaza.
Well,
And the fact
David,
that
can I stop you there, mate? Can we
Sure.
come back to that? Because, you know, the clock is kicking on here, and I'd like the others to get a few words in, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't bother. Because the other thing I would just say about, you know, you want to put in your hope you're going to get all this support, just the realisation of when we send MPs down to Westminster. Since 1934, when the SNP was formed, there's only been 2 successes at Westminster. One was an amendment to a Tory fox hunting bill, and the other was having the claim of right recognised. Even when the Scotland bill was going through in 2015, over 100 SNP amendments with 56 out of 59 MPs were all rejected.
Yeah.
So, you know, let's not think for a minute that anything's going to get passed unless it suits Mother England. It ain't going to get passed. Nothing. That's the problem, and that's why we need to get out of that place and have independence. John, do you agree or disagree with myself about maybe a wee dose of unionism, Labour style, would make people in Scotland remember and realise that, you know, these are not, you're not going to get the land of milk and honey?
I'd rather not have the reminder, if I'm honest. I'd rather just go straight to independence, right? But yeah, it's true. If people who haven't been through, I mean, I remember Ravenscraig shutting down. What was his name? Black Bob, and then work moving down to Sheffield, where he came from, where he worked, you know. And I'm just looking at the situation, and I don't know if they realise, but you know, shutting down our oil refinery, and you know, we can refine oil down in England. It's just the same thing happening again, maybe in a slightly smaller scale. So I wouldn't want people to go through that again, if I'm honest. I don't want them to have that situation where they're, I mean, I don't, if Starmer's the answer, it must have been a really bizarre question, right? I mean, he's just going to carry on with what the Tories are doing, 100%. I mean, you're talking in there about the cost of living, and he's telling us he's setting up an energy company, and it's not. What it is he's going to put public funds into a company to attract private investment. When the private investment comes in, they'll want a return on their money. So it's just a way of siphoning off our energy in Scotland, right? Our renewables, what's left of the oil. So I'm not really happy for people to go through all that pain again, because we've all been through it. I think we're probably old enough to remember some of that stuff. And yeah, I'd rather we were just independent. And on the point of going down to Westminster to do anything that you've just made there, all those amendments the SNP made, everything they've done, ISP are abstaining from Westminster. So I won't be going. Sorry, guys, you're on your own. We'll be working from Scotland, for the people of Scotland. We'll be working in our constituency, and we won't be taking the oath because we don't support the monarchy either. So we won't get paid, but we will get expenses for, you know, setting up a constituency office for employing staff, so the work can still get done. We'll need to make provisions to put food on the table, obviously, as individuals, and we've done that. But I don't think that the SNP's claim that they will push forward for independence is one that is going to come to fruition. So I would, for me, it's about getting independence as soon as possible. And a scary thing for me in this constituency is, having looked at electoral calculus website and some predictions on votes, 8% of the SNP vote looks like it's going to go to Labour. 8% of the Tory vote looks like it's going to Labour. Now, West Lothian is traditionally a Labour area until the SNP surge many moons ago. And it looks like they might go back that way. And what I would say to people in my constituency, and I'm going to tout for votes here, right, is that if 8% of the people who are going to not give Martin Day a vote again in this constituency, if you're going to Labour, they've given the independence vote to the opposition. And what I would ask them to do is to give me that 8% and give it to the competition, so that we can then hold the SNP's feet to the fire. We won't get elected, yeah, but it's going to be the Labour candidate that looks like it's going to be elected. But I think that would send a bigger message to the SNP, because for me, they're stagnating and they're too into devolution at the moment and not focused on independence. So rather than giving that vote to the opposition, give it to the competition, and hopefully that will also keep the independents' vote, the numbers of votes, up and stagnant, or maybe not stagnant, but solid and stable, so that the union can't turn around and say, look, independence has fallen by the wayside because nobody's voting for them anymore, they're all voting Labour. That's a fear from me, because the media will just take that and they'll expand it and blow it up and make it look as if the movement is falling down. So, and it's the same for people who don't want to vote. Don't not vote, go out and vote for somebody, whether it's Alba in your constituency, I'm in Bathgate, Ava's in Alba and whatever, Grangemouth, or whoever it is, go out and vote, because abstaining from the vote, I think, is probably the wrong thing to do as well. It sends the wrong message. So for me, it's get out there and still support the independence parties. If you can't support one, support the other one, so that we keep that vote up, so that we keep the dream alive, as it were, you know. Because if the vote falls or the vote collapses, that's just an excuse for the union to say no. And on the Section 30 issue, Keir Starmer's not even in government yet, and he's told us we're not getting a Section 30. You know, I've got a list here, actually. David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, none of them are giving you a Section 30. Cameron wouldn't give you a second one. How many slaps in the face do you need before you take a hint? I just need the one. Yeah, but we've had all those slaps in the face, and you're not getting a Section 30, I don't think. So, yeah, but back to your original point, I don't want people to go through that pain of another Labour government, to be quite frank.
No. Yeah, but the problem is, Josh, it's not what I worry about. I don't know. In 2017, we didn't lose votes to the Unionists, the SNP, but 500,000 independent supporters stayed at home.
Yeah.
That was the problem. And I think that's going to be, I believe it will be a larger amount of people are going to stay at home. Is that a concern for you?
Yeah, I 100% agree, Roddy. I think that's going to be the case. I think, you know, independent support is hovering, you know, between 40 and 50. And that cat is out of the bag now, I think. And I think that's going to stay there for a long time, as long as we can rescue the movement and show competence within it. And I think that's done at Holyrood, as you said, rather than Westminster. And I think recent polls suggested that those of us that are between, you know, 24 and over 35, you know, are vastly a majority of independents. But I agree with the points that the other guys have made that needs to happen now, and that's why we are standing on, you know, a mandate of immediate negotiations for independence, not asking for another referendum. As John rightfully listed off there, all of the prime ministers, some ridiculous. I mean, how can you accept now is not the time for Theresa May? It's baffling to me, even all these years later. But you know, I think you're right, Roddy. I think people are going to stay at home, and I think that's why it's so important that pro-independence candidates across the country stand and give people a chance to put independence back in the ballot paper. You know, and Airdrie Shotts were the exact same as John. This used to be a Labour stronghold. The votes weren't counted; they were weighed. You know, yeah. and even when I was growing up, you know, the SNP, you'd get abuse for having yellow on. It was even worse from my parents and my grandparents, and spat on and all the rest of it for even daring to suggest it. But that level of support for Labour and for unionism isn't there anymore, and people just want change. And I think you're absolutely right, Roddy, in what you were saying with the kind of young Labour and the young people that are following that have this false sense of utopia of what Labour are going to provide. But you just have to look at what's happened in this recent week just to see what's coming with Labour government. You've got Angela Rayner already, you know, saying that she's going to support Dryden. And after 5 years ago saying that, you know, she voted against it and that she would still stand by that decision, and then today she's saying that, oh no, I'm going to vote for it. I've always supported for it. I guess that battle bus they've bought her was what it cost for her to give up the rights on nuclear deterrence, and it's absolutely disgraceful. I think any politician that can change like the wind like that is not worth their salt. And then you've got Keir Starmer, who's not only coming up here to Scotland and saying, you know what, on one hand, we're going to wring out the profits for the North Sea oil, and with the other hand, we're going to close your industry by banning any more exploitation of it or any more licenses. So you're talking about 100,000 jobs there. And then he goes, oh, but the sweetener is we'll give you a couple of thousand jobs. Question I'd like to ask Sir Keir is how many of those jobs are actually going to be filled by people from Scotland, or are they just going to bus up as pals for London City to be the CEOs, the directors and the middle management? Sure. And as John said, absolutely rightfully said, you know, and it's not even an energy company. It's an investment company. And to bring it back to local issues, we've currently got a Labour-Tory coalition in our council. Jim Logue, 4 or 5 months ago, tried to close down all the leisure facilities to save a couple of million. At this moment in time, the Labour Council have stopped school buses for kids that are out with 3 miles. So kids who used to be 3 miles away from the school used to get buses, and so did kids who were between 1 and 2 miles. He's now cut that, so now it's only kids who are 3 miles away. So kids who are between 1.5 miles away from have to walk past dark canals and all the rest of it. It's only to save £3 million. North Lanarkshire's budget surplus last year was £8 million. That's the Labour that we're going to vote for. It's not a Labour that's going to look after the people. It's not the Labour that's going to invest in the people. It's the Labour that are just wanting to be the Tories with a different colour. And back to the energy company again, Roddy, we all know of the PFI schemes. And recently I've been looking into the budgets in North Lanarkshire Council, just looking at where does all the money go. And we spend so much money on these schools. It's incredible, Roddy. And it's not a case of, you've invested into an asset, you now get to use that asset. Not only did we get rinsed in the fees, we get rinsed in the maintenance fees. At the end of it, we don't even own it. Yeah. So once we get to the end of the contract and we go back to them and say, look, this is our local school, what do you think the private companies are going to say? We're up in the rates. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this British energy company that Starmer's promoting. He's going to invite all his banker pals in, going to get their teeth in. Yep. They're going to say, but we've invested this, we've invested that. That means we need to take it out. And the people are going to be left with nothing. So it's one of those ones where I think people are going to very quickly learn what Labour are all about. And we have to make sure that those that are independence-minded don't jump over to Labour. And as you said, Rory, don't stay at home. And I think that's only done by proper pro-independence candidates. And I'm afraid to say, asking for another referendum just doesn't cut it after 4 or 5 times.
No, it does not. Of course, from your life, the July the 4th is one of the best things that the British ever gave. It's the biggest Independence Day in the world. I mean, everyone, in deepest South America or Africa or whatever, everyone knows July the 4th is Independence Day.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't believe our luck when they declared it on the 4th of July.
But the SNP, with an election in July the 4th, their slogan is, stop the Tories. I mean, if ever there was a great opportunity.
We missed a few, and that's what I'm sure all of us are frustrated by, and that's probably the main reason that a lot of people won't get off the sofas or cancel their holidays or whatever else would have happened to show the rabid support for independence that we feel we need at this point. And I guess I have a question, particularly with respect to Josh's comments just then, around whether or not having a taste of Labour for 1 year, we can recover from that in the Scottish elections and sort ourselves out, because I would hope we could, because I don't certainly want to give up and have to wait 5 years for Labour to show how really nasty it can be to the Scottish lifestyle, rolling back the good stuff that the SNP have done in the meantime. So it feels as if we're going to learn a lesson, we've only got a year to learn it in that respect.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's such a bad thing. When I go back to what I said earlier in the show, since 1934, there's only been 2 successes at Westminster. Now, if you're going to take a beating, the place to take that beating is at Westminster, because even if we had it's 57 seats this time, even if we took all 57 seats, it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference. Not a blind bit of difference. And even if John and all the ISP people won their seat and they went down, it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference.
Totally. So, I think it would only matter if we left, if we won it.
Yes, indeed.
And then walked out.
Everyone walk out, up the road,
absolutely.
Constitutional Convention, and go on with it. But that's not what's on offer. And that's what the big worry for me is that there is no offer
in the first place. Sorry, don't go down in the first place.
Well, I am.
Start that Constitutional Convention. Yeah.
Correct. I am a known abstentionist, so I am very sympathetic to your cause there, John. As Josh knows, I tried to pass the exact same policy at Alba conference and lost overwhelmingly. Shows you how good I am at talking. So fortunately, I've got David here. He's great at it. But remember, we are in time limits, David. But you're right. Okay. I would just like to. I'll throw you that. Here comes the softball that you can hit right back over the net. Anyone voting for any one of these British parties if you think, oh, I'm going to get my revenge on the SNP and all this stuff, and you're voting for one of the British parties, you're voting to give your affirmative backing of the genocide in Gaza. That's just a fact. You vote for a British party because they all are telling the lie. Now, if they're lying to us, they're saying to us blatantly, there is no genocide. We can see it. Everyone can see it happening in front of us. If they lie to you about that, folks, what do you think? What else do you think they're lying to you about?
I think my take on this is, one, I firmly support international law. If we don't have rules and regulations and standards to hold ourselves and others up to, then we're not a civilized society. So you don't even have to look very far to see that what's going on in Gaza between Hamas and Israel is completely unacceptable in the 21st century. There's been tens of thousands of people, innocent civilians, murdered there. And I have to say, I cannot believe that the Labour Party and its leadership stayed silent, not only stayed silent, but actually tried to block any call for a ceasefire. And the first thing that should have happened last year was a ceasefire. Mm-hmm. And they blocked it. So I'd ask people to look into deep inside themselves and ask yourself, why would you vote for a party that's been quite happy to turn a blind eye to the innocent deaths and mayhem, and to say nothing? I also have to say, and this is, if you look at how parties treat some of their own, Diane Abbott, I'm not a huge fan of Diane Abbott, but she's been treated disgracefully by the Labour Party. They've eventually backed down because she was too popular, basically, to take the fight. But they seem to have been going around on a witch hunt, getting rid of some of their own candidates at the last minute. And listen, political parties, I'm in a different position to everybody else here because I don't have a political party now to answer to. I only have myself to answer to. So as I've already said online, my principles haven't changed. The policies I helped develop and get approved and passed into Alba's policies, which I was happy to do, over the Equality Act and men supporting women, child education, all of that, I was very happy that was adopted and widely supported. And I'm going to do exactly the same because I've got two jobs to do if I get elected in 4 weeks' time. One is to further the course of independence and to look out for Scotland. And the other one is to look out for every single constituent in the constituency that I will have been asked to represent. And at the end of the day, whether they voted Labour, blue Labour or yellow Labour, because let's face it, they're all exactly the same. They make note of, they've all got the same policies. They all believe in Brexit. They've all stayed silent on the genocide. So there's no difference between them. All it is a colour difference. But my job is to look after every single person that voted. And I hope as many people as possible vote, because I agree with what's been said already. I think the biggest danger we've got is apathy. I think I've already heard this from someone that worked at the council at the city chambers yesterday where I picked up my documents. The person was saying how they and their husband had been saying how thoroughly fed up they are with all the politicians and all the political parties. They vote for one, nothing changes, nothing ever gets delivered. So while I hear what ISP is saying about not turning up, I would say that's a very difficult sell when you're asking people to vote for you to represent them, because that's what you're asking for, people to be represented. So I intend to represent them to the best of my ability. And we're going to need to get cross-party support, which I believe I'm the sort of person that can do that, to make sure that Scotland's voice is heard and that we do get the powers transferred to the Scottish election. And to go back to what you said, Roddy, about, in fact, no, I think it was Warren that said, in a year's time, will we have learnt the lesson in a year's time? The simple answer to that is, of course not. A year from now, there won't have been enough damage to people. Their electricity bills won't have gone up enough. And therefore, no, they're not going to learn the lesson in 1 year. So yes, independence is going to be set back at least 5 years, I think. I do think we're only going to get a Labour government for one term. I think at the end of 5 years, the country will be in such a mess. There'll be no more roads left, just potholes. So therefore, people will realise that there was no point voting for them. Nothing got better. But my job is to represent the constituents and to ensure that their lives get better, and not just say, oh, well, there's nothing we can do for another 5 years. It's someone else's fault. No, you've got to be there to fight. That's what you're there for, whether you like it or not. And to be honest, I haven't even thought that far. I only decided to do this last Friday night. I wasn't going to do this. I had no plans to do it. And it's only because there's nobody actually worth voting for in Edinburgh West. Alba's not standing. The SNP's guy, I know the SNP's guy. He's quite nice, but I don't see any real action on the ground of them going out to try and get the votes. So I suspect they're not going to get the votes. I think people are going to stay at home. So I'm going to give them an alternative. So if they want to vote for somebody, come and vote for me. By the way, you're not getting a political party. So nobody's going to bend my ear and force me to vote against my principles. That won't happen. And you're on mute for a change.
This is a lesson for you kids. Don't ever open a bottle of Prosecco at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, because by 7 o'clock you might be a candidate for Westminster. That's what happened.
I wasn't even drinking at the time. I drank afterwards.
I would use that as an excuse. I mean, I doff my hat to the three and to all candidates out there of the Scottish independence persuasion. But it takes courage to do what you guys are doing. I really have great admiration. I could never do it. I'd be scared in case I did get elected.
Well, I'm feeling like that at the moment, actually, Roddy.
Yeah. I would end up battering Tories. I know I would. I'd be in trouble. John, your motivation is for your country, and you said that in the women's rights. But can you see any benefit whatsoever? As Warren asked the question, would we, after a year, see enough to make people realise that they've made a mistake? I believe that what Labour will do for the first 3 years is blame the Tories for everything that's wrong. Yeah. That's what they'll do, and then they won't accept responsibility. But will people learn enough that by 2026, because I think it'll be a Pyrrhic victory for the Unionists, because independence is still the preferred option in Scotland. But you're on mute now. You owe me a quid. I charge a quid when you're on mute.
Yeah, you done that deliberately, didn't you? So I think that yes, people will feel it. I think they'll know they've made a mistake. Brexiteers made a mistake. I think SNP 1 and 2 was a mistake. How many times? I'll just go back to what I said before. How many times do you want to make a mistake before we learn? Yeah, and if people are moving their vote from the SNP to a unionist party, if they're doing it to give the SNP a bloody nose, not to support Labour, they should be giving that vote to somebody else in the independence movement, right? And I think that Labour's probably going to win here anyway, looking at electoral calculus website. But if they do get in here, as I said before, they're not going to do anything different from the Tories, so people will get hurt. Yeah, they're practically any policy really that Keir Starmer has proposed. He's done a U-turn on. But didn't really know where he stands on anything. And to go back to the point you're making about Gaza and stuff, younger people might be voting Labour and not know even any of the history there. I mean, it didn't start on October the 7th as a phrase that's going all over. It started way back in the end of the Second World War. Yeah, and it was the UK that put that in place, and it wasn't, the UK aren't innocent in the case of Palestine either. So way back then. So do you want to put people through that pain? I don't think so. I wouldn't want to do that. I would prefer that people learn much, much quicker than we're learning at the moment. I think we should just, try and do whatever we can. And it's one of the reasons I'm standing, because I suppose I just try and get the message out there as much as possible, because all I see is stagnation. And like the other guys have said, people are getting fed up with politicians, and I suppose I'm not probably, I wouldn't be your stereotypical politician, because I'd actually say what I meant and what I felt and what I wanted to happen, and I would oppose the things that I want to oppose, and I would make no bones about it. So that I see politicians now just being basically PR men and women, some of them, and they'll just say whatever they need to say in order to get the vote, in order to get in order to get the gravy, in order to get the expenses, in order to get a career. And for me, that's not what it should be about. It should be about making those changes that people need, and it should be about trying to make like people's lives better. So yeah, I agree with you that if Labour did get in, it would teach people a lesson, but and it might turn us around for 2026. That should be a plebiscite election as well, by the way. We've supported a plebiscite election since way back, since we started. And the SNP 1 and 2 thing needs to be reviewed by everybody, especially in the SNP, because in this region here, if I had been given the 110,000 votes, or even if you'd split them in 4, one to me, one to Alba, one to the SSP, one to an independent, we'd have another 4 independence candidates sitting here in Lothian, and we don't have that. We have one, we have a Green Party member. Everybody else is Tory, Lib Dem, Labour. Of course, we've got the presiding officer in here as well. So you can put people through that pain if you want, and it will teach them a lesson. But we all know that lesson, and I'd rather try and educate people to say, actually, we don't want to put you through this. Don't put yourself through it. You know what I mean?
It's very difficult, and it's very difficult in 4 weeks to do that, especially with no access to the media.
100%. And if they all go and vote Labour, mate, then you're right, they will get hurt. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and well, it's something I think they're going to have to take to get there. But the overall thing, Josh, if you actually look at it now, one of the shows we had, someone was saying, "Oh, look at the poor Americans. They've only got Biden or Trump to choose." And you go, "Yeah, well, that's true." Then you go, "Well, look what we've got. We've got Sunak or Starmer." I mean, it actually exposes the paucity of the British Union. That's the choices, because we're stuck in a first past the post system. We're stuck in a system where we've got an unelected second chamber. The choices are Starmer or Sunak. It's like death by firing squad or by hanging. The poor British people, not just in Scotland, but the poor British people don't really have much of a choice, do they?
Absolutely not, really. I wouldn't even just say the poor British people, but the poor people that we've hurt all over the world, as John alluded to. The British state and its imperialism, whether you look in Gaza or even look at the Karen people right now in Burma, that we just decided to start all over there and then disappear. It's absolutely incredible, Roddy. And I think the point that was made earlier on by Warren and John there about the Holyrood, and that's the key to success, Roddy. It's not a first past the post system. It's got a system that was technically designed to stop a pro-independence majority. It failed, I think, thanks to Alec. But now we've got a chance to use that system against the unionists. And if only we'd been listened to in 2021, we went with the supermajority idea. We'd be independent by now. Almost guarantee it. In terms of using an election as a plebiscite, certainly not running to the UK Supreme Court asking for their permission for a referendum. But you're absolutely right. The first past this post system, it's archaic. It needs to change. And for those that are left in Britain after we leave, I would seriously hope that they would take that under consideration and change it, because they're both the same. They both support the same policies, as John alluded there. Labour's strategy this election seems to be say nothing, then you can get nothing wrong. There's nothing bright about what they're proposing. There's nothing new or exciting that's going to change this country. It's just changing a blue tie for a red tie. And in some, it makes you sick, especially in the heartlands like here, Airdrie, Shotts, where I'm, old coal mining communities and towns, which kick-started the unions, which kick-started the Labour Party, and all the people that fought for it. And Labour has become so, entwined with unionism just now, but that wasn't what Labour Party was for, especially not in its establishment. It was for the working people. Labour Party was supposed to put the toffs on their backsides and out the door. But what's happened instead? We've got a Sir as the leader of the Labour Party, and I think that says all you need to know about it, Roddy. And it needs a system to be changed, but I hope Scotland will be long gone before we have to talk about that.
Yeah. Warren, the clock's kicking on here. You and I had a wee conversation. Oh, this was 2 days ago or something. And you asked me, and you said, what can we do, Roddy, to make, this, how can we turn this round? You remember that wee conversation we had? But here's what I would suggest this now. I think this beating that's coming, and it is a beating that's coming, that then gets all of us from all the different parties. Because the one thing that was right, and I said it when we started the show, Scotland United, because Scotland United will not be defeated. And maybe after this, is there a chance, Warren, that we can all kick some sense into the different parties and people and say, now we need Scotland United for 2026. Let's have that constitutional convention. Let's come up with a plan. Let's unite. Let's take on the unionists at their own game and let's beat them, and let's make this next election, every election, a plebiscite election. Would that be the way forward?
I totally feel like it has to be. As you said, I don't think we have time to necessarily change the prevailing winds so quickly in this election. In a way, it's a cycle that many political parties face, no matter how good or bad they are, if they've been in power as long as SNP have. Yep. It's just sort of like the fall of countries, right? You just shake apart, you get too entrenched, and you've got too much baggage, and you can't really shake that off. And I think there's some great people in the SNP. Don't get me wrong, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But if what you say, Roddy, if we can have a wake-up call at this election and then get it completely together as a united independence movement before the Scottish elections, I think we can still turn it into a win. I think that's the way I'm taking it right now.
Yeah, I think it's the way forward. Because what I found very depressing today, and it was John Swinney was being interviewed, and he turned around and said, the Tories move to make biological sex in the Equality Act is undermining devolution. John, your job's not about anything about devolution, mate. You've got one job only. And that's what I would say to every single one of them. One job only, and it's independence, nothing less. And until we all get back on that, and we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, we ain't going anywhere.
Roddy, David, can I just come back? Because that's a subject close to my heart. And it's probably the main reason why I'm now standing for election. The Equality Act does need revised. There's no doubt about it. It needs to be sharpened up and clarified, that when it talks about, and you'll remember I made a speech at the Alba conference about a year ago, men must support equality. At the moment, there's two types of equality under the term sex. One is a legal sex, which is a piece of paper that says a man can actually self-identify as a woman, and as soon as he's got that, he is effectively, according to the law, a woman, which of course biologically is total nonsense and completely against science, and we can prove it. So I will and have been arguing for a clarity, and so it's the only thing I think I've got in common with the Tories, actually, because they said they're going to bring this in. So sadly, got news for everybody, but if I do get elected, I will be supporting that piece of legislation for Edinburgh West, and I'm doing it so that every woman's rights will be embedded in law clearly, that their sex is a protected characteristic, and it's got nothing to do with this legal piece of paper. I believe it does need to be done. And just to correct the leader of the SNP, so not only is he talking utter nonsense and clearly acting against women's best interests, which he should be, 50% of the population be more worried about that. And yet he isn't. So I'm afraid my friends in the SNP, and I do have some friends and I do support them, but the ones that are pushing this gender nonsense on us, they still seem to be in charge. And I think that has just exposed the difference between what's really important, and this is why I'm standing, is to uphold and continue to campaign for women's rights and equality. I didn't start that lightly, and the job isn't finished. We must clarify the Equality Act to ensure, this is Alba policy as well, by the way, not just my opinion of it, that we must have that change put into law. So if the Tories are serious, and they do propose it, although I don't expect them to be in power, to be honest, I would support such a change. And I think so should every other Scottish MP. We owe a debt of gratitude to women. They all gave birth to us, and we are not taking them seriously. So I think it's a hugely important issue, and it probably will cost the SNP a lot of votes because of what John Swinney's position is.
No doubt at all. I thought when Humza broke up with the Greens, that was because he was fixing to do that, and it just didn't happen. And I think we're all kind of feeling flat right now.
Yeah, someone pulled his strings from behind. It's heartbreaking. Gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time and your wisdom today. To the candidates, let me wish you all the very best of luck. And to all independence candidates everywhere, I wish you all the best of luck. And if you don't have an independence candidate you like, the other option, folks, is Not My Parliament. You can write that across your ballot paper, because it's important that we send a message. If we're not going to vote, we're voting, but it's Not My Parliament. So you've got another option. And to you, Warren, for stepping in here into the lion's den, as it were.
I felt I was amongst friends, Roddy. I don't think the gentleman here and I disagree on anything, quite frankly. Sounds like they're going to do a good job no matter what happens.
But you're right. It's because this is grassroots. The grassroots agree. It's the high Hegians in all the parties that are the problem. They're the ones that cause the problem, because they're so interested in themselves that they're not actually interested. They put the party before the country every time. And that's what's wrong. And you lot better start waking up. Not you lot, not this lot here. You know who I'm talking about.
Good luck to all you guys. I really hope you do well. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. And as I say, I'll keep trying to get as many more candidates on as I can. I might even try and I've been trying always. I'll bring some unionists. It'll be a short programme, but we'll have them on anyway. Glad to see you and yours. Take care.
Cheers. Bye, guys.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.